The day started with a glow of excitement, at least in her heart. Naomi had looked forward to this day for months. She woke up early on her birthday, feeling a light flutter in her stomach. She was a woman of simple joys. A balloon or a small cake could fill her heart with gratitude. She did not need an expensive piece of jewelry or a big surprise party. All she wanted was a warm hug from her husband, Calvin, and a sweet kiss that told her she mattered. But the morning air was tense. Calvin, who had grown distant over the past year, did not meet her eye. He was lost in his thoughts, drumming his fingers on the dining table while she cooked breakfast. Naomi could sense something was off. The usual birthday excitement she had felt was slipping away. She was trying to force a smile, to keep hope alive. She placed a plate of scrambled eggs, crispy bacon, and buttered toast in front of Calvin. He pushed the plate aside without a word. Naomi stood there, her stomach tightening. Maybe he was just stressed about work. She tried to ignore the fear in her heart and took a seat across from him. She waited for him to say something English that would acknowledge her birthday. But the only sound was a clock ticking on the wall. For a moment, Naomi wondered if she had done something wrong. She looked at Calvin's face, which seemed carved from stone. The silence broke when his phone chimed. He looked at the screen, typed a quick reply, and sighed. Naomi tried to calm herself. She could almost hear the frantic beat of her own heart. She waited for him to meet her eyes, but he didn't. Finally, her nerves took over. "Calvin, is everything okay?" she asked in a gentle voice. She reached out, almost touching his hand before he moved it away. He looked up, and for the first time that morning, there was a fire in his eyes. "No, nothing is okay," he said, his voice low and cold. "Naomi, I've put up with this long enough." She froze, her breath catching in her throat. "Put up with what?" she asked, her voice trembling. He stared at her, almost as though he had never loved her. "All your nonsense, your constant need for attention, your clingy behavior," he hissed. "I can't do this anymore." Naomi's mind spun. This was her birthday. How could he be so cruel? She searched his face for any sign of the kind man she had married, but all she saw was bitterness. She tried to stay calm, but panic made her words come out shaky. "Clingy? Calvin, I just wanted us to spend some time together." He shot up from his chair, pushing it back with a screech that made Naomi jump. "Enough," he snapped. "I'm done pretending." His voice dripped with anger. "I'm not happy. You want me around every second. You want me to be someone I'm not." Naomi could feel tears forming in her eyes, but she blinked them away. This was not the birthday she had imagined. She wanted to speak, to tell him how hurtful his words were, but she could only open her mouth in shock, unable to form a response. Calvin reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. He threw it on the table in front of Naomi. She stared at it, not understanding what it was. "What is that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He crossed his arms over his chest. "Divorce papers," he said plainly. "I'm leaving you." Naomi felt a jolt of terror run through her. This was a betrayal far worse than she had ever imagined. Her body went numb, and her heart seemed to stop beating for a few seconds. Her husband, on her birthday, was telling her he wanted a divorce? She forced herself to pick up the envelope. Her hands trembled as she opened it. In bold letters, it spelled out exactly what Calvin had just said. They were official documents, already signed by him. She felt dizzy, as though the floor might crumble under her feet. Tears welled in her eyes. Despite her attempt to stay strong, she looked up, and through her blurred vision, she saw Calvin's eyes hardened. He showed no guilt, no hesitation. He seemed sure of what he was doing, and that hurt more than anything else. "Why today?" she asked in a choked whisper. "Why on my birthday?" His expression did not soften. "Because it's time," he replied. "I can't waste another day living a lie. I want out. And believe me, it's best for both of us." Naomi's tears began rolling down her cheeks. It was the most unsettling feeling she had ever experienced. Everything she had built in her mind, the life they had shared, the future she had hoped for, was crashing down in a single moment. Before she could gather her thoughts, he walked away. The echo of the front door slamming shut felt like the final blow to her heart. Naomi sat alone at the table, staring at the divorce papers, tears streaming down her face. On the one day that was supposed to be about celebrating her life, she was left feeling worthless and discarded. A wave of heartbreak and betrayal swept over her. She did not know how long she sat there in the silent house, but the pain felt like it would never end. Her husband, the man she once believed would love her forever, had just insulted her, belittled her, and walked out the door taking her sense of stability with him. If there was ever a moment she thought she could not endure, it was this one. Yet, somehow, she was still breathing, still alive, and still able to feel the awful ache in her chest. Naomi's life had shattered on the morning of her birthday, and she felt certain nothing could ever put the pieces back together again. The darkness of grief hours passed. Though Naomi could not tell if they had been minutes or days, she wandered through the house, numb and lost. Every corner reminded her of something she and Calvin had once shared: the sofa they bought together, the wall painting they found at a street market, the fridge plastered with pictures of them on vacation. Now all these memories felt tainted. She cried until her eyes ran dry. When the tears stopped, she just stared into space. She tried to process the reality of what had happened. Her husband had ended their marriage, and he had chosen her birthday to do it. Her mind kept spinning, searching for answers. Naomi's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. At first, she did not want to pick it up. She was certain it was her sister calling to wish her a happy birthday. She could not bear to say out loud what had just happened. The phone went silent for a few seconds, then started buzzing again. After the third time, Naomi finally mustered the energy to walk over and grab it. "Happy birthday, sis," came her sister Violet's cheerful voice on the line. "How's my birthday girl doing?" Naomi bit her lip, fighting back a fresh wave of tears. She wanted to keep up a front, but Violet was too close to her. She would sense something was wrong right away. "I'm okay," Naomi lied, her voice cracking. Her sister paused for a moment. "Hey, you don't sound okay. What's going on?" Naomi couldn't hold it in anymore. She broke down, telling Violet through sobs everything that had happened that morning. By the time she finished, Violet was speechless. "Oh my God, Naomi," Violet whispered, trying to comfort her. "I'm so sorry." Naomi sniffed, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I can't believe he did this on my birthday," she said softly. "He didn't even try to talk things through. He just handed me the divorce papers and left." Violet struggled to find the right words. "That is cruel," she finally managed. "You deserve so much better. He didn't see how beautiful and precious you are." Naomi felt a faint warmth in her chest at her sister's loving words, but the pain was still heavy. She thanked Violet for calling and asked her not to share the news with anyone else yet. She was not ready to face people's pity or endless questions. Violet agreed, ending the call with a promise to visit soon. Left alone again, Naomi knew she couldn't stay in the house forever. The walls felt like they were closing in on her. She decided to go out for a walk. Maybe the fresh air would clear her mind. She grabbed her jacket and headed out into the cool afternoon. The city streets felt oddly empty, though they were filled with people. Naomi saw cars passing, people talking, and children running around, but she felt detached from it all. She was trapped in her own heartbreak. She stared at the ground as she walked, not wanting to meet anyone's gaze. It seemed like the entire world was celebrating something while she was stuck in a nightmare. After a while, Naomi found herself in front of a coffee shop she used to love. She hadn't been there in months. It was the place where Calvin had first told her he loved her, many years ago. Her chest tightened at the memory, but she was desperate for something warm to drink. She stepped inside, hoping a familiar latte might soothe her pain. She ordered her drink and found a small table in the corner. The shop's chatter buzzed around her. but she felt alone. She took a sip and let the aroma fill her senses. Her hands still shook, and she realized she was exhausted. She had been running on raw emotion all day. As she sat there, she overheard a few people at a nearby table laughing about some funny family moment. She felt a pang of envy. She used to have that kind of happiness too. Now, the life she had built felt like a distant dream. While she tried to focus on the warmth of her coffee, her mind kept flashing back to the moment Calvin slammed the door. The divorce papers were now on her kitchen table. She had yet to sign them. She had no idea where he had gone or what he planned to do next. An hour passed in that small corner of the coffee shop. Naomi stared out the window, watching the gray sky. She wondered if it would rain. The city lights began to flicker on. She realized how much time had slipped by. Her heart felt hollow. She knew she had to face the reality that this was actually happening. She was a woman in her 30s, suddenly finding herself alone, with a broken marriage on her birthday. She kept asking herself why Calvin's love had run out so harshly. Naomi took one last sip of her latte, set the empty cup down, and stood up slowly. Her legs felt heavy as she walked out the door. She glanced at the sky. It was indeed starting to drizzle. Maybe it was a sign that even the heavens understood her sorrow. With her hood up, she walked through the light rain, her eyes fixed on the pavement. She had no particular place to go, just a need to keep moving. The gentle tap of raindrops on her shoulders felt like a sad lullaby. She felt a dull ache all over, both physically and emotionally. It would be easy to collapse under the weight of it all, but somewhere deep inside her, Naomi felt a tiny spark. She had always been someone who tried to find hope, even in the darkest moments. She did not know when or how, but she felt that somehow, in some way, she had to rebuild her life. Yet, at that moment, she had no idea that a new, unexpected chapter would soon begin on that would change everything she thought she knew about love, about herself, and about the possibilities life could still hold. Tears in the park, Naomi found herself gravitating toward an old, quiet park on the edge of the city. She used to come here when she was younger, back when things were simpler. The park had tall oak trees, a small duck pond, and a winding walking path. A few street lamps lit the area with a soft glow. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, giving the night an almost dreamy feel. She sank onto a wooden bench near the pond, listening to the gentle lapping of water against the edge. The park was nearly deserted. She could make out distant silhouettes of a few people hurrying through the drizzle, but she was mostly alone. Naomi sat there, hunched over, lost in her thoughts. She felt the ache in her chest return with full force. A tear escaped, and then another. She didn't bother wiping them away. She needed to cry, to let the sadness flow out of her. It was too big to hold inside. The events of the day played in her mind like a broken record. She thought about Calvin's face as he handed her the divorce papers. She recalled the venom in his voice, how he accused her of being too needy. Part of her wanted to hate him, but she mostly felt empty. The question that haunted her was, did she deserve his cruelty? In the dim light of the park, her silent tears fell, each one carrying a tiny piece of her shattered heart. She didn't notice that someone was watching her from a distance. A tall figure stood under a lamppost, observing her quiet sobs. After a few moments, he walked closer, his footsteps soft on the damp grass. Naomi was so lost in her grief that she barely registered the presence of another person until he spoke. "Miss, are you all right?" The voice was gentle and low, laced with concern. Startled, Naomi looked up. Her eyes met a man who seemed to be in his late 30s or early 40s. He had a kind face, framed by short, well-groomed hair. He was dressed in an expensive-looking suit, with a coat draped over one arm. His eyes radiated sympathy. In her state of heartbreak, that simple look felt like a lifeline. She quickly wiped her tears, embarrassed to be caught crying by a stranger. "I'm fine," she managed, though her voice quivered. He didn't believe her, of course. No one crying alone in a park at night was truly fine, but he did not push. Instead, he knelt down beside the bench, offering her a small handkerchief. "Here," he said. "You look like you need this more than I do." Naomi hesitated but then accepted the handkerchief. It felt soft in her hands, a contrast to the harsh day she had endured. She dabbed at her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. The man nodded, stood up, and kept a polite distance, as if to show he meant no harm. They sat in silence for a few beats, with only the sound of drizzle around them. Naomi felt both awkward and strangely comforted by his presence. Finally, she gathered the courage to speak. "I'm sorry," she said softly, staring at the ground. "I didn't mean to worry anyone." "No need to apologize," the man replied. "I saw you crying and thought you might need someone to talk to. Sometimes it helps to know you're not alone." His voice had a soothing quality that eased some of Naomi's tension. She offered him a weak smile. "I appreciate it," she replied. Then she realized she was still clutching his handkerchief. "I'll wash this and return it," she said. He waved his hand dismissively. "That's not necessary. Keep it if you want." The gesture was small, yet to Naomi it felt significant. She opened her mouth, about to ask his name, but before she could, he spoke again. "Do you want me to leave you alone?" he asked gently. "I don't want to intrude." Naomi looked at him, taking in his sincere expression. She shook her head. "No, it's okay," she said. "I'm not really in a place to tell you my story, but I'm grateful you asked. Most people would just walk by." He nodded, his gaze filled with genuine concern. "All right, then let me sit here with you. We don't even have to talk." She didn't know why, but his kindness almost made her want to cry again. Instead, she scooted to one end of the bench, making room for him to sit. He took the seat, leaving a respectful space between them. The air was quiet, except for the faint hiss of drizzle and the soft rustle of tree branches. Naomi stared at the duck pond, where a single street lamp cast a pale reflection on the water's surface. She felt the stranger's presence like a gentle shield around her sorrow. It was unusual to find this level of kindness from someone you didn't know. She felt a subtle urge to share a bit of her story, even if just a fragment. "It's my birthday today," she found herself saying, her voice low. The man turned to her, his face filled with surprise. "Is it? Well, happy birthday, though I'm guessing it hasn't been very happy." Naomi gave a shaky sigh. "My husband just asked for a divorce," she said. It felt strange to reveal it to someone she had just met, but the words tumbled out anyway. "He insulted me, left me with papers on the table, and walked away." The man's brows furrowed. "I'm very sorry," he said softly. "That's a terrible thing to go through, especially today." Naomi nodded, grateful that he didn't offer empty cliches like, "It's for the best," or "You'll get over it soon." He seemed to understand that her pain was raw and real. They sat in silence for a moment before the man stood up. For a second, Naomi thought he was leaving. Instead, he surprised her by slipping off his coat and gently draping it over her shoulders. "You look cold," he said simply. She was cold, though she hadn't noticed it until that moment. She mumbled a quiet thank you, stunned by his care. He sat back down, giving her a soft smile. In the stillness of the park, Naomi realized she had not even asked his name. She turned to him. "I'm Naomi," she said quietly. He returned her gaze. "I'm James," he replied. "It's nice to meet you, Naomi." She nodded, feeling a small spark of comfort at hearing his name. The night air wrapped around them, and the drizzle finally stopped. The only thing that lingered was the gentle sound of water in the pond and the unspoken heaviness of Naomi's heartbreak. But for the first time that day, she felt a flicker of warmth in her heart, an inkling that her world might not be completely dark. Though she had no idea who James was beyond his name, his simple act of kindness felt like a light in her night of despair. A breeze rustled the leaves above them. Naomi felt the weight of the day pressing down on her, But James's presence offered some relief. They stayed on that bench for a while longer, sharing small talk. She learned that James traveled often for business, that he was familiar with this city, but he didn't live here full-time. He didn't press her for details about her divorce. Instead, he allowed Naomi to speak when she felt like it, and quietly sat with her when she needed silence. It was a tenderness she hadn't expected from a stranger. There was something about him. He had a gentle, respectful way of being near her without making her feel judged. Eventually, the night grew colder, and James reached inside his suit jacket to check the time on his phone. He stood up, looking hesitant. "I hate to leave you out here alone, but I have a meeting early tomorrow," he said. "I do worry about you. Will you be all right getting home?" Naomi rose from the bench, still wearing his coat. The air felt even chillier against her cheeks. She glanced around. The park was dark and almost empty. She swallowed hard. The thought of returning to her house, the place of her fresh heartbreak, was daunting. Sensing her reluctance, James spoke in a gentle tone. "Do you have somewhere else to stay for the night?" It wasn't an intrusive question. It came from genuine concern. Naomi debated what to say. She had a sister in another part of town, but she wasn't sure she was ready to see anyone or to face more emotional conversations. She could also get a hotel room, but that seemed so strange on her birthday, yet it might be better than sitting in a dark house full of memories. James cleared his throat quietly. "Look, I understand it might be too soon to trust me," he said, his voice soft. "But if you need a safe place to stay, I can help you find a nice hotel. I know a few in the city that are comfortable and secure. I'll even cover the cost for tonight. Consider it a birthday gift, if that's all right." Naomi stared at him, overwhelmed by his kindness. She wanted to decline. A part of her felt guilty accepting help from a stranger, but the honest care in his gaze made her pause. She also realized she had no real plan for the night, and she feared being alone in the house where Calvin's presence still lingered. The idea of stepping inside her bedroom, once shared with him, felt too painful right now. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice unsteady. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden," James said firmly, his eyes shining with sincerity. "Sometimes we all need a little kindness, especially when we're hurting." Naomi let out a long breath, her shoulders relaxing a bit. "Thank you, James. That's very generous," she said. "I'll accept, just for tonight." He gave a nod, relief evident on his face. "All right, let's go," he said. "My car is parked nearby." They walked out of the park together. Naomi couldn't help noticing that James was careful to keep a respectful distance, not wanting to startle her. It felt like he was aware of her fragility, treating her with the same caution one might show a wounded bird. When they reached his Cara sleek, black sedan that looked quite expensive, he opened the passenger door for her. She paused, feeling a mix of gratitude and unease. She reminded herself that not all strangers had bad intentions, and so far, James had shown her nothing but kindness. Naomi slipped into the passenger seat. The warmth of the car's interior wrapped around her, a sharp contrast to the chilly evening air. James got in, started the engine, and soon they were gliding through the city streets. Naomi stared out the window, watching the lights blur by. Despite everything that had happened, she felt an odd sense of calm. Perhaps it was the shock wearing off, or maybe it was James's soothing presence. She wasn't entirely sure. As they drove, James asked simple questions to keep her awake and engaged. "So, Naomi, how long have you lived in this city?" he asked, his tone casual. "My whole life," she answered. "I grew up in a neighborhood not too far from here. My parents still live in the suburbs." He nodded. "It's a lovely city. I've visited many times, but I haven't spent more than a few weeks in one stretch. My company keeps me traveling a lot." The conversation flowed naturally. Naomi found herself asking about his work. He explained that he managed a chain of upscale stores, though he didn't go into much detail. She could tell he didn't want to make it all about him, which she appreciated. Soon, They pulled up to a small, elegant hotel, tucked away on a quiet street. It wasn't a flashy five-star place, but it looked comfortable and well-kept. James parked and got out, quickly hurrying to the trunk to grab an umbrella. He opened her door, offering the umbrella as she stepped out. Naomi was surprised by each gesture of care. It had been so long since someone treated her with such respect. Calvin had once done these things, but that felt like a lifetime ago. Inside the hotel lobby, the soft lighting made the atmosphere warm. A friendly receptionist greeted them, and James asked for a room for Naomi. He gave his credit card without a second thought, telling the receptionist it was for a friend. Naomi felt a rush of embarrassment and gratitude all at once. She got her room key, and they rode the elevator to the 4th floor. When they reached the door, Naomi turned to James. "I really don't know how to thank you," she said, her eyes brimming with tears, again this time from a sense of being cared for in the midst of her heartbreak. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry about it," he murmured. "I'm just glad I could help you feel a bit safer tonight." Then he pulled out a business card from his wallet. "Here's my number. If you need anything at all, or if you just want to talk, call me. I'll be in town for a few more days." Naomi took the card, noting his full name, James Preston. She tucked it into her purse, her heart still heavy yet touched by his generosity. "Thank you, James," she said again, not sure how to express the depth of her gratitude. He nodded, offering one last kind smile. "Try to get some rest, Naomi. Happy birthday, and I hope tomorrow is better than today." With that, he stepped back, letting her enter the room alone. She closed the door softly, leaning against it for a moment. The room was small but cozy, with a queen-sized bed and a little desk near the window. She set her purse down and shrugged off his coat, placing it carefully on the back of a chair. Then she kicked off her shoes, her feet aching from the emotional weight of the day. Naomi felt her phone buzz in her purse. She checked it, expecting a message from Violet. Instead, she found texts from old friends wishing her a happy birthday. The irony of their bright messages against her shattered life was too much to handle. She switched her phone to silent, not ready to talk to anyone else. She collapsed onto the bed, letting her tears flow again. This time, though, her tears felt a little different. They carried sorrow, but also a sense of being cared for, even if only by a stranger named James Preston. She thought about how gentle he had been, how he listened without judgment. Her mind tried to process the stark contrast between Calvin's cruelty and James's kindness. Eventually, exhaustion took over. Naomi drifted into a fitful sleep, her thoughts swirling with confusion, heartbreak, and a faint glimmer of something that might be hope. Sunlight peeked through the hotel curtains, gently waking Naomi from a restless sleep. For a moment, she forgot where she was or what had happened. She stretched her arms, expecting to find Calvin beside her. Then reality came crashing back. She was in a hotel, alone, because her husband had ended their marriage on her birthday. The heartbreak returned with a fierce intensity, like a fresh wound being pried open. She lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling. Tears threatened to spill again, but she forced herself to breathe. She needed to find some sort of footing in this new reality. She could not stay in this hotel room forever. After a few minutes, Naomi forced herself up. She noticed James's coat draped over the chair and felt a surge of gratitude. A memory flashed, James handing over his credit card for her room without hesitation. She still couldn't wrap her mind around how a stranger could be so thoughtful. She got ready slowly, taking a long shower that helped clear some of the fog in her head. As the warm water cascaded over her, she told herself that she had to deal with the mess Calvin had left. The divorce papers were probably still sitting on her kitchen table. The thought of returning to that house filled her with dread, but she didn't have much choice. Once dressed, Naomi packed her small bag. She had no idea how long she would be staying in the hotel, but she also knew she couldn't keep leaning on James's generosity. She left the room, went down to the lobby, and approached the front desk. She intended to pay for the remaining nights herself, or at least see if she could handle the bill. But the receptionist informed her that James had already paid for 2 nights in advance. Naomi felt her chest tighten. It was too much. She briefly considered checking out right then. But she also knew she needed a safe space to figure out her next steps. "All right," she said softly, and thanked the receptionist. She stepped outside. The morning air was crisp, but the sky was clear. It was a new day, yet she felt more lost than ever. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She half expected more birthday texts, but it was a message from Violet. "Naomi, please let me know you're okay. I'm worried about you. Call me when you can." Naomi decided to text back. She typed, "I'm safe. Staying at a hotel for a bit. Need time to think." She hit send, unsure if she should add more. Violet quickly responded, "Glad you're safe. Mom and Dad are worried, but I won't tell them until you're ready. Love you." Naomi sighed, a wave of relief washing over her. At least Violet was respecting her need for space. She tucked her phone away and began walking. The city was bustling with morning commuters, cars honking and people hurrying along the sidewalks. She felt out of place, like she was moving in slow motion compared to everyone else. But she walked on, determined to reach her home. After about 20 minutes, she stood in front of her house. Her heart pounded. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The silence was deafening. The divorce papers lay exactly where Calvin had left them, a cruel reminder of his betrayal. Naomi moved through each room, her chest tightening with every memory. In the living room, she could almost see them laughing at a movie together. In the kitchen, she remembered baking cookies during the holidays. In the bedroom, she recalled the soft whispers before they drifted off to sleep. Now, all that was gone. She sat at the kitchen table, the divorce papers in front of her. She read through them, tears falling on the pages. Calvin had already signed. All she needed to do was add her signature to end the marriage. The finality of it made her stomach churn. She set the papers aside, unable to sign them yet. She needed time. Feeling drained, she made herself a cup of tea. The warmth soothed her throat, which felt tight from crying. Her mind wandered back to James. Was he still in the city? Would he call or text? She realized she had his business card in her purse. Part of her wanted to reach out, but she didn't want to seem desperate or clingy, especially after the words Calvin had flung at her. She finished her tea, rinsed the cup, and stood there, staring at the sink. Each second in the house felt like a weight pressing down on her. She grabbed a small suitcase from the closet and began packing some clothes and essentials. She decided that staying at the hotel for one more night might be best. She needed space to heal, away from the haunting reminders of her broken marriage. As she zipped up her suitcase, a wave of nausea hit. She realized she hadn't eaten much since yesterday. Her appetite was gone, replaced by a hollow ache in her stomach. She forced down a piece of bread, hoping it would settle the queasiness. Before leaving, she caught sight of her reflection in a hallway mirror. Her brown eyes looked dull, her face puffy from crying. She thought about the words Calvin had used. He had called her needy and childish. She stared at herself, noticing her natural beauty had faded behind stress and heartbreak. But she was still Naomi. She was a strong black woman who had overcome struggles before. She had to believe she could do it again. She set her jaw, turned away from the mirror, and rolled her suitcase to the door. Back on the street, the sun was higher now, warming the sidewalks. Naomi hailed a cab, deciding she couldn't handle public transport with a suitcase and her emotional state. She sank into the back seat, telling the driver the hotel's address. The city zipped by in a blur. Her thoughts bounced between the heartbreak and the small spark of hope that perhaps she was not as alone as she felt. When she arrived at the hotel, she checked in at the front desk and went back to her room. After locking the door behind her, she flopped onto the bed. She stared at the ceiling, her mind spinning with questions about her future. Would she try to fight for her marriage? Did she even want to? After his cruelty, where would she live? What about money? Her phone beeped. A text from Violet. I can come over later if you want. Just say the word. Naomi stared at the text, torn. She could use the moral support, but she also wasn't sure if she was ready to break down in front of her sister again. She texted back a simple reply. Maybe tomorrow. Love you. She put her phone away, deciding that she needed a moment of quiet. She flipped on the TV for some mindless background noise. A reality show about home makeovers flickered on the screen. She watched without really registering what was happening, letting the chatter of strangers fill the room. At some point, her gaze flickered over to James's coat, which she had brought back from the hotel closet. It lay folded neatly on the desk chair. She reached for her purse, pulling out his business card. She studied it, reading the name James Preston again and again. She felt a flutter of curiosity. Who exactly was he, beyond a kind stranger? The card listed him as the CEO of Preston Luxury Goods. No wonder his suit and car looked so nice. He was probably wealthy. A momentary pang of self-consciousness nagged her. Why had he bothered to help her? Did he have some hidden motive? Or was he just a genuinely good person? Naomi had been hurt too many times to believe in fairy tales. Still, she remembered his gentle voice, the way he offered her comfort without asking for anything in return. Naomi lay there, card in hand, debating whether to call. Ultimately, she decided to hold off. She needed to gather her thoughts. If James truly wanted to help, he would pick up if she called later, or maybe he would reach out on his own. For now, she just needed to rest, to let the swirl of her emotions settle. Closing her eyes, she tried to block out the noise of the TV, the hum of the air conditioner, and the relentless ache in her heart. She wasn't sure how she would rebuild her life, but she knew she had to start somewhere. This day, and the next, and the one after that, would be part of her journey to find herself again. Little did she know, the simple act of a stranger's kindness would become a lifeline, leading her toward hope, self-discovery, and perhaps a love deeper and truer than the one she had just lost. Unseen rays of hope late, in the afternoon, Naomi woke from a brief nap to a soft knock on her hotel room door. Groggy, she sat up, heart pounding. She wasn't expecting anyone. Had her sister found her? Another knock sounded, more tentative this time. Naomi walked to the door and peered through the peephole. Standing outside was a bellhop, holding a small box and an envelope. Cautiously, she opened the door a crack. "Miss Naomi Daniels?" the bellhop asked politely, checking a slip of paper in his hand. She nodded slowly. "Yes, that's me." He handed her the items, a white box tied with a blue ribbon and a sealed envelope. "These were delivered for you at the front desk," he said. "Enjoy your evening." She thanked him and closed the door, her mind filled with questions. Carefully, she placed the box on the desk and opened the envelope first. Inside was a small note on a piece of fine stationery. "Naomi, I hope you're feeling a bit better today. It's never easy to go through heartbreak, especially on a day meant for celebration. I thought a little something sweet might brighten your afternoon. James." Naomi stared at the note, her heart swelling. She lifted the lid of the box to find a small, elegant chocolate cake, decorated with a single edible rose on top. The scent of cocoa wafted up, comforting in its own way. She felt tears pricking her eyes again, but these were tears of gratitude rather than sorrow. She had not heard from Calvin. There were no apologies, no texts checking on her well-being. Instead, a man she barely knew had taken the time to send her a thoughtful gesture. Naomi carefully set the cake on the desk, feeling a mix of warmth and sadness. It was a reminder that kindness still existed in a world that had just shown her its cruelty. She took a small fork from the hotel's kitchenette and tried a bite of the cake. It was rich and sweet, a gentle balm on her emotional wounds. As she savored the bite, she felt something shift within her, a subtle hope that maybe she was not beyond compassion. Feeling braver than before, she picked up her phone and looked at James's business card. She hesitated, her finger hovering over the call button. She didn't want to seem too eager, but she also wanted him to know she received his gift. Summoning her courage, she dialed the number. It rang twice before he picked up. "Hello?" His voice was polite, but she sensed a hint of warmth when he realized it was her. "James, hi. It's Naomi," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I just got your cake and note. That was incredibly kind of you. Thank you so much." His tone softened. "I'm glad you liked it," he replied. "I wasn't sure if you'd be up to something sweet, but I wanted to do a little something to cheer you up." Naomi found herself smiling. It was the first real smile since her birthday. "It did cheer me up," she admitted. "You didn't have to do that, though." "I know," he said gently, "but I wanted to." Silence fell for a moment, neither of them sure what to say next. Finally, James cleared his throat. "How are you feeling today?" he asked. Naomi let out a shaky breath. "I'm a bit better, I guess. Still trying to figure things out." Two went back to the house, saw the papers, packed some things. "It's all so overwhelming." She heard him sigh softly. "I can only imagine," he said. "You don't have to rush into any decisions. Divorce is a huge step, and you should take all the time you need." Her eyes filled again at the sound of that word divorce, but she steadied herself. "Thank you," she whispered. After a pause, James spoke again. "I'm free for dinner tonight. If you feel up to it, maybe we could grab a bite to eat? It doesn't have to be fancy. Just somewhere quiet where you can relax and talk if you want." Naomi hesitated. A dinner invitation felt both comforting and terrifying. She didn't want to appear lonely or desperate, but the truth was, she was lonely. And James had been nothing but respectful. Maybe having a companion for a meal would be better than eating alone, staring at these four walls. I'd like that," she finally said, her voice trembling slightly. "Thank you for inviting me." He sounded genuinely pleased. "Great. I'll text you the address of a nice little restaurant. Very casual. I can swing by and pick you up, or we can meet there. Whatever makes you comfortable." Naomi felt her heart lift at his considerate tone. "Maybe I'll meet you there, if that's okay," she replied. She still needed to maintain a bit of independence and caution. This was all so new. "Of course," he said. "I'll see you at 7? 7 is good," Naomi confirmed. They said their goodbyes and ended the call. She sat back on the bed, phone in hand, her thoughts swirling. She was still reeling from her husband's sudden betrayal, but for the first time, she felt a tiny thread of excitement about what the evening might bring. The rest of the afternoon passed quickly. Naomi tried to stay calm, reminding herself that this dinner was not a date, was just two people sharing a meal. She told herself not to read too much into it. Still, she spent extra time picking out what to wear. She settled on a simple navy blue dress that was flattering but not flashy, pairing it with low heels. As she got ready, she realized she was actually looking forward to seeing James again. At 6:45, she stepped out of the hotel and hailed a cab to the address James had texted her. The ride took about 10 minutes, depositing her in front of a cozy, softly lit bistro. She took a deep breath before walking inside. James was waiting by the hostess stand. He wore a casual blazer over a collared shirt, dark jeans, and polished shoes. When he saw her, his face lit up with a warm smile. "Naomi," he said, coming closer. "You look lovely." A slight blush crept up her cheeks. "Thank you," she murmured, matching his smile. The hostess led them to a small table in a quiet corner by a window. The restaurant had a serene ambience, with soft music playing in the background and candlelight flickering on each table. They both took a seat, and Naomi noticed how James discreetly studied her expression, as if checking to make sure she was comfortable. They started with small talk discussing the city's weather, a local food festival, and random tidbits about their backgrounds. Naomi learned a bit more about James. He grew up in a modest household, worked his way through college, and eventually built a successful luxury goods company. He seemed slightly embarrassed talking about his wealth, as though he worried it might define him in a negative way. When the waiter arrived, James encouraged Naomi to order anything she wanted. She chose a light pasta dish, Her appetite was still shaky, but the environment made her feel like she could at least try to eat. James ordered grilled fish. They sipped on water and shared a few slices of fresh bread as they waited. Naomi felt a flutter in her chest. She kept reminding herself to remain guarded, yet she couldn't ignore the comfort she felt in James's presence. He asked how she was coping with her life changes, but he didn't pry. Each question he posed allowed her to share as much or as little as she wanted. She told him bits of her story, how she and Calvin had met in college, married a few years later, and how she thought they were happy. "I didn't see the divorce coming," she said, her voice trembling. "I knew we had problems. He wasn't as attentive, but I didn't think he'd just end it like that." James listened intently, elbows resting on the table, his eyes never leaving her face. "I'm sorry you were blindsided," he said, sounding genuinely sympathetic. "No one deserves that. You have a right to be shocked, angry, and hurt. It's okay to feel all of those things." Naomi felt tears threaten to surface, but she blinked them back. "Thank you," she whispered. "I keep wondering if I did something wrong, if I drove him away." James leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Naomi, don't blame yourself for his actions. Even if there were issues, he should have communicated, tried counseling, anything other than ambushing you. It says more about his character than yours." She studied his face. He was so steady, so confident in his words. A sense of relief bubbled inside her. She nodded, letting out a slow breath. "You're right," she said quietly, as though speaking those words might make them feel real. Their meals arrived, and they ate at a comfortable pace. The food was delicious, and Naomi found herself enjoying the flavors more than she expected. Between bites, they continued talking about her sister, her job at a local marketing firm, and random movies they both enjoyed. She was amused to learn James had a secret love for old comedies, especially those from decades past. "They have a charm you don't find in modern films," he explained with a slight grin. "They're genuine and silly in the best way." Naomi smiled. "I love old musicals," she admitted. "Sometimes I sing along, even though my voice is awful." The moment she said it, she laughed, remembering how Calvin used to complain about her singing. She felt a twinge of sadness but tried to push it aside. As dinner wrapped up, James settled the bill before Naomi could even protest. "This is on me," he insisted, smiling. "I invited you, remember?" They walked outside together. The night air was mild, carrying a gentle breeze that felt refreshing against Naomi's skin. "Thank you for tonight," she said, turning to face him. "You don't know how much it helped, just to get out of my head for a bit." He smiled, hands in his pockets. "I'm glad. You deserve some peace." She noticed he hesitated, as if he wanted to say more. Then he spoke softly. "I'll drive you back to the hotel if you'd like. Or do you have other plans?" Naomi shook her head. "No other plans. A ride would be nice," she admitted. He nodded, leading her to his car parked nearby. The drive was quiet but not uncomfortable. Soft music played in the background. Naomi gazed out at the city lights, her heart feeling lighter than it had in days. She sensed James glancing at her from time to time, his concern still present, but he gave her space. They arrived at the hotel, and James pulled up to the entrance. Before she got out, she turned to him, feeling a sudden surge of emotion. "James," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Thank you for everything. You've shown me kindness when I felt the most unworthy. I'm grateful." He reached over, gently squeezed her hand, and offered a gentle smile. "You're not unworthy, Naomi. You're strong, beautiful, and deserving of happiness. Don't ever forget that. Good night." She squeezed his hand back, tears threatening to spill again. "Good night," she whispered, then stepped out of the car. Entering her hotel room, Naomi felt more optimistic than she had that morning. She shrugged off her jacket, sat on the bed, and let out a shaky breath. Her thoughts swirled with the warmth of James's smile, his comforting words, and the subtle way he made her feel cared for. As she prepared for sleep, she noticed a spark in her chest, a fragile sense of hope that maybe, just maybe, life still had good things in store for her. And it was in that fragile hope, resting quietly in her heart, that a new chapter was beginning to bloom. The next few days were a strange mix of sadness and small joys. In the mornings, Naomi still wrestled with the shock of her crumbling marriage. She hadn't signed the divorce papers yet, but the weight of that decision loomed. She spent much of her time between the hotel and her house, sorting through belongings, trying to decide what to keep and what to let go. Yet, during those difficult days, James's presence continued to fill her thoughts. He would text her now and then simple messages, asking how she was doing or sharing a funny moment from his day. On 2 more occasions, they met for coffee in the early afternoon, sitting by a window table and chatting about everyday things. They never made grand plans. It was more like they were building a friendship, one conversation at a time. Naomi found herself wanting to open up more. She told him about her childhood, her college dreams, and the little joys she once found in painting and baking. It felt liberating, talking about her life without the painful filter of Calvin's judgments. James, in turn, shared pieces of his own history, the struggles he faced in building his company, the times he nearly went bankrupt, and the mentors who guided him. He told Naomi he was in the city to finalize a deal for expanding his stores into a new region. Yet despite his busy schedule, he found time to see her or at least send a quick text. On the 4th day after her birthday, Naomi was standing in her kitchen, packing up glassware. She planned to move some items into a storage unit until she figured out her living situation. A sudden pang hit her as she carefully wrapped a set of wine glasses. Memories of toasts shared with Calvin at anniversaries or holiday dinners clouded her mind. She placed the glass down and closed her eyes, willing herself not to cry. Her phone chimed. She checked it, expecting a message from Violet. Instead, she saw James's name light up the screen. "Hey Naomi, just checking in. How are you holding up today? Need any help with packing or anything else?" She felt her heart warm at his thoughtfulness. She typed back, "I'm okay, just packing some boxes. Thank you for asking. I think I've got it under control, but I appreciate the offer." Within seconds, his reply came, "All right, take it easy. If you change your mind, you know where to find me." Naomi set her phone aside, feeling a small grin form on her face. Every little interaction with James gave her a sense of being valued for who she was, not who she was supposed to be to please someone else. That evening, Violet came over. She walked through the living room, her eyes scanning the half-packed boxes. Naomi briefly explained her plan to move most of her personal items into storage and check out of the hotel soon. "You know you can stay with me," Violet insisted. "You don't have to stay in a hotel paying who knows what every night." Naomi glanced away. "Actually, I'm not paying," she confessed, her voice quiet. She then told Violet about James, how he had found her crying in the park, and how he had paid for her hotel room for a couple of nights. She admitted she'd been covering her own hotel expenses since then, but not for the first 2 nights. Violet's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "A complete stranger did all that? Sis, are you sure he's not looking for something else?" Naomi bit her lip, sensing her sister's protective nature. "I considered that," she said, "but he's never made me feel pressured or uncomfortable. He's been kind, like a friend." Violet looked relieved, yet cautious. "Well, he sounds decent, but just be careful. You're in a vulnerable place, and the last thing you need is someone taking advantage of you." Naomi nodded, understanding her sister's concerns. "I'm being careful," she assured her, "but so far, he's been nothing but respectful." They spent the evening discussing the divorce papers. Violet gently asked, "Are you going to sign them?" Naomi took a shaky breath, explaining she needed more time. She wasn't clinging to the marriage, but she felt uncertain about the finality of the action. Violet squeezed her hand. "Take your time," she said softly, "but don't let him control your next steps out of fear. You deserve better, and you should move on your own terms." By the time Violet left, Naomi felt a bit calmer. She decided to spend one last night in her house, to see if she could handle being in that space without falling apart. She wanted to prove to herself that she was strong enough. But as night fell, and she walked into the dark bedroom alone, her courage wavered. Memories of her shared life with Calvin haunted her at every turn. Her phone chimed. She checked the screen. "James, I know it's late. Just want to say hang in there. You're stronger than you know." Naomi's heart clenched. How did he always seem to sense what she needed to hear at the right moment? She typed back, "Thank you. That means a lot. Good night." She curled up in her bed, hugging a pillow close. For a while, she stared at the ceiling, listening to the distant sounds of cars passing by. Gradually, her eyelids grew heavy, and she drifted off into a fitful sleep, her dreams filled with images of a smiling James and a scowling Calvin, as though her mind was torn between the past and a possible future. Naomi woke the next day to the sound of her doorbell ringing. Rushing to throw on a robe, she opened the door to find Calvin standing there, looking tense and impatient. Her heart lurched at the sight of him. His hair was disheveled, and his eyes carried a mix of guilt and anger. "Calvin!" she managed, throat tight. "What are you doing here?" He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his gaze sweeping over the packed boxes. "So, you're packing already," he said bitterly. "Looks like you can't wait to leave." Naomi felt her temper flare. "You left me," she reminded him, voice tight. "You served me divorce papers on my birthday. Did you expect me to sit here and cry forever?" He paused, running a hand through his hair. "Look, it all just got out of hand," he muttered. "We were miserable. It wasn't working anymore. I thought it was best to end it." Naomi let out a hollow laugh. "You could have talked to me," she said. "We could have tried therapy. But you blindsided me, you insulted me and made me feel worthless." His eyes flickered with guilt. "I'm sorry," he murmured, though it sounded half-hearted. "I just wanted out. And yes, maybe I chose a terrible time, but I had to do it." Naomi drew a shaky breath, refusing to crumble. "What do you want?" she asked, folding her arms over her chest. He avoided her gaze. "I came to see if you signed the papers." Her stomach twisted. "So that's why you showed up. You're not worried about me. You just want me to sign and disappear." He frowned, glancing at the boxes again. "If you're moving out, might as well make it official," he said. "We can go our separate ways." A surge of anger and pain coursed through Naomi. She noticed he didn't mention anything about her well-being or regrets beyond a grudging apology. "I haven't signed them," she said finally, lifting her chin. "I'm not fighting to keep you, Calvin. I'm just not doing anything on your schedule. I'll sign them when I'm ready." He scoffed, but there was unease in his expression. "Fine," he snapped. "But don't drag this out. It's not healthy for either of us." He turned to leave, and she followed him to the door. As he stepped outside, he paused, looking over his shoulder. "I did love you once," he said, voice strained. "Don't think that was all fake." Naomi's eyes welled up, but she blinked back tears. "Then you should have ended it with some decency," she whispered. "Goodbye, Calvin." He said nothing, just walked away with a stiff stride. Naomi closed the door gently, her head spinning. She felt a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. The conversation, though painful, gave her a sense of closure. She understood now that Calvin's love had vanished long ago, replaced by resentment. She couldn't change the past, but she could decide how to move forward. She sank onto the couch, letting out a long breath. She thought of James, how different he was from Calvin. It was too soon to think about a future with anyone else, but the contrast between them was stark. Calvin had belittled her, while James lifted her up. Calvin barely showed concern, while James showed kindness. She felt a flicker of gratitude for having met someone who reminded her she was worthy of respect. Naomi texted Violet, updating her on Calvin's visit. Violet's replies were quick and supportive. She encouraged Naomi to keep doing what felt right for her and not to be rushed by Calvin. By mid-afternoon, Naomi decided to treat herself to a bit of self-care. She had not done anything purely for herself in days. She booked a nail appointment at a nearby salon, hoping the small pampering would ease her tension. The salon was quiet, with soft music playing. A friendly nail technician worked on her hands, filing and painting them with a pastel pink color. While her nails dried, her phone buzzed. She saw James's name and smiled involuntarily. She glanced at the text. "Just finished a business meeting. How's your day, Naomi?" She typed back quickly. "Complicated. Calvin showed up asking if I signed the papers. But I'm okay. Getting my nails done, trying to de-stress." A few moments later, "I'm sorry he's pressuring you. Good for you, taking some time for yourself. Want to grab an early dinner later?" Naomi felt a warm flutter in her chest. She looked at her freshly painted nails, marveling at how a small act of kindness from herself and from James could brighten her day. She replied, "I'd love that. Pick me up at the salon around 5? He answered immediately, "Looking forward to it." Once her nails were done and dry, Naomi stepped outside. The sun peeked through scattered clouds, and a light breeze ruffled her hair. She felt alive, in a way she hadn't in a long time, aware of her own emotions, yet also open to the good that might come. She strolled along a tree-lined street, glancing at boutiques and cafes. Part of her was still a little shaken by Calvin's visit, but she knew deep down that it solidified her decision to leave him behind. She was no longer a prisoner of his indifference. At 5 o'clock sharp, a sleek black car pulled up. James stepped out, wearing a soft sweater and jeans this time. He looked more relaxed than usual. Naomi's heart did a little flip at how glad she was to see him. He opened the passenger door, and she slipped inside. "Hey," she said, smiling softly. "Thanks for picking me up." He returned her smile. "Anytime. I'm glad you agreed to meet." They drove to a small, family-owned restaurant Naomi had never visited before. James parked, and they walked inside. It had a cozy atmosphere, with wooden tables and warm lights. The hostess seated them near a window with a view of a small garden. For the next hour, they talked about everything except divorce-funny stories from their childhoods, embarrassing moments, and random facts about favorite foods. Naomi found herself laughing at James's tales of mishaps during his early business days. She shared memories of trying to bake elaborate cakes as a teenager, which often ended up burnt or lopsided. Their food arrived, smelling delicious. They ate slowly, savoring the flavors and the ease of conversation. Naomi realized she felt lighter around James, like she didn't have to pretend or tiptoe around potential landmines of criticism. A moment came when she gazed at him, noticing how intent he was on listening to her every word. She wondered if this was how a partnership was supposed to feel: equal, caring, and respectful. She remembered Calvin's constant phone checks or zoning out when she spoke, and the difference hit her with staggering force. As dinner wrapped up, James reached across the table and gently touched Naomi's hand. "You seem brighter today," he noted, a hint of pride in his voice. "I'm happy to see that." Naomi felt a rush of emotion welling up. "I am feeling a bit better," she confessed. "I guess I'm starting to accept what happened with Calvin. It hurts, but I know I can't hold on to someone who doesn't want me." James nodded, his thumb lightly caressing the back of her hand. "You deserve so much more than that," he murmured. "Don't doubt your worth." She blushed, her heart thumping in her chest. For a moment, she wondered if this closeness was happening too fast, but the sincerity in his eyes eased her doubts. She felt safe with him, something she hadn't felt in a long time. They left the restaurant, strolling out under a slowly darkening sky. The day's warmth lingered, and the faint hum of traffic played in the background. James's hand brushed against hers as they walked, and he hesitated, glancing at her. Naomi smiled shyly, slipping her hand into his. It was a simple gesture, yet it sent a wave of warmth through her entire body. He walked her back to his car, opened the door, and she slid in. As he drove, Naomi's thoughts raced between the past and this budding connection with James. Could she truly start over? Was it possible to find love so soon after heartbreak? But as she stole a glance at his calm profile, she realized life had a way of surprising her. For better or worse, doors closed and others opened. Maybe this was her second chanson she never expected, but one she might be ready for if she took it one day at a time. When James dropped her off at the hotel, he walked her to the lobby. They lingered near the elevator, unsure if they wanted to say goodbye just yet. Naomi's heart pounded as she looked up at him. The elevator doors slid open, then closed again, as they stood there, in a comfortable silence. Finally, James leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. It was tender, respectful, and it made Naomi's eyes flutter shut in a soft sigh. He pulled back, gauging her reaction. She opened her eyes, and a faint smile curved her lips. She felt seen, cherished feelings she hadn't experienced in a long time. "Good night, Naomi," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "Good night, James," she whispered. Then, stepping into the elevator, she watched as the doors closed. Her heart pounded in her ears, a cautious excitement bubbling inside her. She knew her story was far from over. The pain was still there, and there would be more struggles ahead. But at least now, she was no longer standing in darkness, alone. A new, gentle light had begun to guide her forward. The following week brought a mix of closure and new beginnings. Naomi finally found the courage to sign the divorce papers. She realized that holding on to an empty marriage would only stunt her healing. So, with shaking hands, she scribbled her name on the dotted line. Tears fell on the paper, smudging the ink slightly, but she pressed on. When it was done, she felt oddly numb, yet a weight lifted from her shoulders. She called Calvin and told him the papers were signed. He sounded relieved, thanked her curtly, and ended the call. Naomi exhaled, realizing that chapter of her life was now officially closing. The very next day, she moved out of the house, taking her personal belongings to a new apartment she had found. It was small, with a cozy living room and a bright kitchen that faced east, welcoming the morning sun. Violet came over to help her unpack, and they spent the day arranging furniture, hanging pictures, and making it feel like home. James texted several times, offering his help. She declined for now, wanting to do this part on her own, but she felt warmed by the thought that he cared enough to volunteer. By evening, the new apartment was livable, and Naomi found herself standing in the middle of her living room, hands on her hips. Boxes still lined the walls, but it already felt more like her space than the old house ever did. Late that night, Naomi settled onto her new couch, exhausted but satisfied. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She picked it up to see James's name. "How's the move going? Need anything?" She smiled, her heart fluttering. "All moved in, thanks to Violet. I'm tired, but it feels good. You?" His reply came quickly. "Wrapping up some business. Might be heading back to my main office soon, but I'd like to see you before I go." Her chest tightened. She hadn't realized he'd be leaving so soon. They hadn't really defined what they were to each other, and the thought of him leaving made her uneasy. "I'd like that too. Want to come over tomorrow? I can cook something simple, maybe pizza or pasta." "That sounds wonderful. I'll bring a bottle of wine if that's okay." "Perfect. See you tomorrow." Naomi set her phone down, leaning her head back against the couch. Anxiety and excitement churned within her. She wanted to show James her new space, but she also worried about what his departure might mean. They were in a delicate stage of whatever this relationship could become. Still, she resolved not to overthink it. She wanted to enjoy the moments they had. When James arrived the next evening, Naomi was a bundle of nerves. She had thrown on a casual dress and prepared a homemade pizza with fresh toppings. He stepped inside, holding a bottle of red wine, his gaze sweeping the apartment. "This is nice," he remarked, smiling at the warmth of the space. "Thanks," Naomi said, a bit breathless. "It's still a work in progress, but I like it." He set the wine on the kitchen counter and turned to her. "Congratulations on your new place," he said softly, "and on signing the papers. That must have been difficult." Naomi's throat tightened as memories of signing her name flashed. "It was," she admitted, "but I feel like I can breathe now. No more waiting for someone who doesn't want me." His expression flickered with something like protectiveness. He slipped his arms around her, drawing her close. His warmth and steady heartbeat soothed her. "You deserve every happiness," he murmured. "I'm here if you want me to be." His words sent a thrill through Naomi. She was still cautious, but she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward James. She tilted her face up, and their lips met in a gentle kiss. It was their first real kiss, soft, tentative, carrying a promise of something deeper. After a few moments, they pulled away. Naomi's cheeks burned, but she felt a rush of joy. She busied herself with cutting the pizza, her hands trembling slightly. James opened the wine, poured them each a glass, and they sat at her small kitchen table to eat. Over slices of pizza, they talked about their families, their future hopes. Naomi confessed she wasn't sure she was ready to date seriously, but she also didn't want to push him away. James acknowledged her feelings, assuring her he wanted to move at whatever pace she was comfortable with. As they talked, Naomi felt her walls lowering. For too long, she had believed she wasn't worthy of genuine affection, Calvin's harsh words echoing in her mind. Now, looking at James's sincere eyes, she saw a reflection of acceptance and warmth. They finished dinner, and James helped wash the dishes. Naomi appreciated how he didn't hesitate to roll up his sleeves and get his hands soapy. Afterward, they migrated to the living room, where the glow of a simple lamp cast a cozy light. James settled onto the couch, and Naomi curled up next to him, resting her head on his shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her, tracing gentle patterns on her arm. "Naomi," he said after a while, his tone serious, "I need to be honest with you. I'm leaving in 3 days, heading back to my main office in another state, but I don't want this to end. I know you've just gotten out of a marriage, and I respect that you need time. However, I can't pretend I don't have strong feelings for you." A knot formed in Naomi's stomach. She pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes. "I have feelings for you too," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But I'm scared. Everything is happening so fast. You've been my anchor these past weeks, and the thought of you leaving." She couldn't finish the sentence. He pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I'll be back," he promised. "My work will bring me here often. And you can visit me too, if you're comfortable with that. We can see where this goes." Slowly. Tears brimmed in Naomi's eyes. She never expected to feel this strongly about someone else so soon. But James's sincerity was undeniable. She nodded, leaning her head against his chest. "Slowly," she repeated, as if saying it out loud would calm her fluttering heart. They continued talking, making tentative plans for visits and phone calls. Naomi realized they were stepping into unknown territory, but she felt ready to try as long as they went at a pace that respected her healing process. Eventually, James stood to leave. Naomi walked him to the door, her eyes shadowed with sadness at the thought of him being gone soon. He cupped her cheek in his hand, gazing at her. "I'll see you tomorrow before I start packing," he promised. She nodded, heart pounding. With that, he slipped away into the night, leaving Naomi by the door, her emotions swirling with a mix of longing and courage. She closed and locked the door, then leaned against it. A part of her was terrified love hadn't treated her well in the past. But another part felt undeniably alive, like she was stepping out of a dim room into the sunlight for the first time. Over the next 2 days, Naomi and James squeezed in as much time together as possible. They strolled through the park where they first met, sharing quiet smiles as they recalled that night of tears. Naomi felt a mixture of fondness and sadness, remembering how broken she had been and how his gentle kindness had turned her life around. They also had dinner with Violet, who was initially wary of James. but his genuine care for Naomi soon won her over. By the end of the meal, Violet seemed to approve, hugging him goodbye with a friendly smile. "Take good care of my sister," she teased, "or you'll have to answer to me." James laughed. "I promise." On the morning of his departure, Naomi met him at his hotel room to say goodbye. Suitcases were lined up by the bed, and the atmosphere was bittersweet. He handed her a small gift, a delicate silver bracelet with a tiny heart charm. "Just to remind you that you're in my thoughts," he said, eyes shining with emotion. Tears welled up, and Naomi blinked them away. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you." They stood there, face to face, the unspoken tension of separation hovering between them. Naomi reached up, gently touching his face. "I wish you didn't have to leave," she murmured. James sighed, pulling her into his arms. "It won't be for long," he said softly. "And we'll talk every day, if you want." He pressed a tender kiss to her lips, savoring the moment. A few minutes later, his driver came to help load the suitcases into the car. Naomi walked with James to the lobby. They stood near the revolving doors, saying their final goodbyes. Her heart ached, but she also felt stronger than before. She knew she could handle this. This was a different kind of relationship, built on mutual respect, not on desperation. "I'll call as soon as I land," he promised, giving her a final kiss on the forehead. "I'll be waiting," she replied, voice trembling. "Safe travels." With that, he was gone, stepping into the car that would take him to the airport. Naomi stood on the sidewalk, watching until the vehicle disappeared around a corner. She exhaled slowly, her heart heavy with longing yet buoyed by a new sense of hope. Calvin's betrayal still stung, but James's love and kindness offered a second chance at happiness. The weeks that followed tested Naomi's resolve. She threw herself into her job, taking on new marketing campaigns and earning praise from her bosses. She also enrolled in an evening art class, rekindling her passion for painting, something she had abandoned during her tumultuous marriage. James kept his word, calling and texting her daily. Their conversations ranged from silly jokes to deep reflections on life. They video chatted every weekend, sometimes cooking at the same time in their separate kitchens, laughing at each other's mistakes. Gradually, Naomi learned to navigate her single life. She finalized the divorce details, divided assets, and took comfort in her new apartment. Each night, she looked at the silver bracelet on her wrist, thinking of James and the promise he represented. Friends and family noticed a change in her. She seemed more self-assured, more at peace, even though she was still healing. One day, Violet commented, "You look so radiant, Naomi. It's like you've found yourself again." Naomi smiled. "I think I have," she said, reflecting on how far she had come since that fateful birthday. About a month after James left, he called Naomi with exciting news. "I'm coming to town next week," he announced. "My deal went through, and I want to celebrate. I was hoping you'd be free for a special evening." Naomi's heart soared. "I'd love that," she replied. "I can't wait to see you." They spent the next few days texting about possible dinner spots. James hinted at a surprise, but he wouldn't give any details. Naomi felt a giddy anticipation, much like the first time he'd invited her out. The day of his arrival finally came. Naomi took extra care getting ready, choosing a simple, elegant dress in a deep burgundy shade. She put on the silver bracelet, which now felt like a lucky charm. When James knocked on her apartment door, she rushed to open it, heart thumping. There he stood, a broad smile on his face. He wore a tailored suit that highlighted his confident posture. Before she could say a word, he pulled her into a warm embrace. Naomi melted into his arms, inhaling the familiar scent of his cologne, feeling the reassurance of his presence. "You look stunning," he whispered, stepping back to admire her. "I've missed you so much." "I've missed you too," she admitted, her cheeks flushing. He offered his arm, and she took it. "Shall we go?" he asked. "I have a reservation somewhere nice." Naomi nodded, letting him lead her to a sleek black car waiting outside. As they drove, James kept the conversation light, asking about her work, her art class, and any new recipes she had tried. She answered with excitement, finding joy in sharing the little details of her life. But she also sensed a hint of nervousness in him, like he was waiting for the perfect moment to reveal something important. They arrived at an upscale restaurant, one Naomi had heard of but never visited. The interior was luxurious gleaming chandeliers, crisp white tablecloths, and a pianist playing soft tunes in the corner. James guided Naomi to a private table near a window overlooking the city lights. As they settled in, a waiter brought champagne. James raised his glass, looking at Naomi with affection. "To new beginnings," he toasted. Naomi's chest fluttered. She clinked her glass with his, taking a small sip of the sparkling liquid. A warmth spread through her, fueled by excitement and a touch of nerves. Dinner was exquisite. Each course burst with flavor, and Naomi couldn't help but marvel at the elegance of it all. But she noticed James growing quieter as the meal progressed, his gaze frequently drifting to her bracelet. Finally, when dessert arrived at an artful arrangement of chocolate and berries, James cleared his throat. "Naomi," he began, voice soft yet resolute, "I've been thinking about this for a while. You're the most remarkable woman I've met. Your strength, your kindness, and the way you've rebuilt your life after such heartbreak. You've inspired me more than you know." Naomi's heart pounded. She placed her fork down, focusing entirely on his words. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Naomi's breath caught, her eyes widening. James opened the box to reveal a simple yet breathtaking Ringa delicate band with a sparkling diamond at its center. Her heart soared, but disbelief tumbled through her. Was this truly happening so soon? "Naomi," he continued, his eyes shining with emotion, "I know this is fast. I know you've been through so much already, but I also know what I feel. You are a confident, beautiful, and resilient woman. You deserve love, respect, and happiness. I want to give you that, for the rest of our lives if you'll have me." Naomi's hands flew to her mouth, tears pooling in her eyes. "James!" she managed, her voice trembling. She thought of her journey, the heartbreak, the tears in the park, the gentle arm he offered her when she had felt worthless. Now, here he was, offering forever. He gently took her left hand. "I'm not asking you to forget your past," he said, a slight tremor in his voice. "I'm asking you to let me be part of your future. Will you marry me?" Tears slid down Naomi's cheeks. She glanced at the ring, then back at James's earnest face. Every doubt flashed through her mind. Was she truly ready for marriage again? Yet, in the same heartbeat, she recognized that what she shared with James was unlike anything she'd known before. It was rooted in genuine compassion, understanding, and admiration. She nodded slowly, tears shining in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Yes, I'll marry you." James's face lit up, relief and joy flooding his features. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms. The restaurant broke into gentle applause, even the pianist pausing to clap softly. Naomi buried her face in James's shoulder, tears of happiness soaking into his jacket. She felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for second chances, for unexpected kindness, and for the realization that she deserved to love and be loved deeply. They spent the rest of the evening in a state of blissful wonder. Naomi couldn't stop staring at the ring, her heart fluttering at each sparkle. James held her hand, as if afraid to let go. They talked about the future where they might live, how they'd balance his traveling, and how they'd create a life together that honored who they both were. By the time James drove Naomi back to her apartment, the night sky stretched overhead, stars twinkling like scattered diamonds. In the stillness of the car, he took her hand again, lifting it to his lips for a tender kiss. "I promise," he said softly, "I will never take you for granted. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." Naomi felt tears threaten again. She smiled, her heart almost too full to contain. "I love you," she whispered, the words flowing out with an ease that surprised her. It was the first time she had said those words to James, and they felt right. His breath caught, and he cupped her cheek. "I love you too," he murmured. Leaning in, he pressed his lips to hers, sealing their promises in the quiet of the night. Months later, Naomi stood on a sunny beach, a gentle breeze ruffling her veil. Dressed in a flowing white gown, she looked out at the horizon, where the blue sky melted into the ocean. She felt a sense of peace and contentment she never thought possible. As the soft music began to play, she turned to see James walking toward her along the sand, his eyes locked on hers. She remembered the day he found her crying in the park. She remembered every warm hug, every word of encouragement, every gesture that reminded her of her worth. Now, she was marrying the man who had helped heal her wounded heart. They exchanged vows before a small gathering of family and close friends. Violet stood beside Naomi, tears of joy in her eyes. James slipped a wedding band onto Naomi's finger, next to her engagement ring, and she did the same for him. Their smiles were radiant, reflecting a deep mutual respect and love that had grown from pain into promise. At the reception, Naomi laughed as she danced with her new husband, the sun dipping below the horizon in a blaze of orange and pink. She felt alive and cherished, understanding that her old heartbreak no longer defined her. Calvin's betrayal was a chapter in her story, but it wasn't the final one. She was a confident, beautiful black woman who had found the courage to love again with someone who adored her just as she was. Late into the evening, James and Naomi slipped away from the celebration, walking hand in hand along the shoreline. The cool water lapped at their feet. She leaned her head on his shoulder, the moonlight glinting off her rings. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice laced with gratitude, "for believing in me, for seeing me when I felt invisible." James gently squeezed her hand, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. "Thank you for letting me," he replied, "for trusting me with your heart." They paused, gazing at the vast ocean before them. Life was not perfect, and challenges would surely arise, but they would face them together. Love had found Naomi again, not through force or desperation, but through kindness and faith in a new beginning. Smiling, she turned her face up to his, and they shared a tender kiss, sealing the promise of a future bright with hope.